Debate, the honourable member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be splitting my time with the member from Cowichan, Malahat, Langford. Thank you. I'd like to start off by saying, since I'm hearing others who are speaking on this issue in the House are validating their informed comments with their lineage in agricultural history. So I would like to give a shout out to my agricultural family, from dairy farmers to wheat, you name it. Everyone's busy right now getting the machines ready and getting into the fields. This is a very busy time, and I salute them. And I also add that in my informal discussions, not in my political discussions with my colleagues here, but these are the same people who understand and are very disconcerted that there is no political will here, because there is a simple solution that must be addressed in the short term for the viability of family farms, and then a long-term solution can be finessed if this government chooses, with proper consultation. But we've seen this problem now for a few years escalating, and that political will that was not forthcoming is something that has made our dairy farmers specifically cynical. And I have to say that it is very disconcerting. Canadian consumers and those who worked in the farm and agriculture sector, including family dairy farms, are confounded by the Canadian government's lack of enforcement of Canadian cheese compositional standards. It's as simple as that. Dairy farmers, like the Jobins in my riding of Windsor-Tecumseh, hard-working, resilient, dedicated members of our communities, dairy farmers of Canada, who are disappointed that there was no mention of the safeguarding of their industry in the throne speech or in the budget. These are the same people who are very confounded with the lack of action of this government in its time here, since it did make a commitment during the election phase that it did identify in their 100-day plan addressing this issue. There is an aligned and cohesive position on this issue of diet-filtered milk, which really is regarding food security and consumer awareness, as well as protecting a regulatory environment that Canadian dairy farmers accept and operate in. Canada's dairy farmers speak with one voice on diet-filtered milk. The Canadian government is allowing this responsible and important industry to be undermined. Ironically, this motion has been tabled to stress the point that it is not necessary for the government to take its time to develop and pass complex or new regulation and new definitions. The solution is actually very simple, and the Liberal government needs to enforce the very standards that do exist today, and it is that simple. Where is the conviction and the earnestness now that the Liberals hold government? It is very disheartening to hear the cries of our Canadian families who rely on the dairy industry for their livelihoods being ignored thus far by this government. During the 2015 election campaign, Canadian dairy producers called for the problem of diet-filtered milk to be solved within the first 100 days, and the Liberals promised, and I quote, to review the existing standards, rules and practices regarding the import of food products, including dairy proteins, to ensure that they serve the interests of Canadians. They promised to solve the diet-filtered milk problem, which is costing our dairy producers millions of dollars, yet unfortunately they're continuing to drag their feet. Once again, we're seeing that it is political will. It's starting to look like a broken promise, but the solution is simple. and it's a matter of properly enforcing the compositional standards for cheese for all Canadian producers. The dye-filtered milk problem has been going on for at least 2 years, with dye-filtered milk, an American product that was exclusively designed to circumvent Canadian laws, surging. It's part of a larger family of concentrated milk proteins. No American processor uses dye-filtered milk in its products. None. It is imported, and it's used by Canadian processors in place of milk, leading to huge economic losses for our dairy producers. And I have to say, it is also misleading Canadian consumers. Canadian producers lose an estimated $220 million per year, or $15,000 per producer, from the importation of dye-filtered milk. Our producers are worried. Not only has Canada signed trade agreements that underline supply management and compensation, it's also letting the problem of dye-filtered milk drag on. What does this insinuate? That is a troubling question, and I could segue off and do a debate on softwood lumber at this point, but I'll keep it to dye-filtered milk. It is important that we are concise, that we are enforcing existing standards, even if you're going to identify a long-term plan. Here and now, we have to adhere to our enforced standards. We have to. This is sovereignty and food security issues highlighted in the most exemplary fashion. Our producers are worried, like I said, about our trade agreements that undermine supply management and compensation, and it's clear that here we have the Liberals following the Conservatives, where they're trying so hard to differentiate themselves from at election time. This is the time for you to seize the moment and, as a government, give a real demonstrated effort with this opportunity to remove that cynicism that people are starting to have with more and more broken promises. Under the cheese compositional standards for Canada, it's required that a minimum percentage of the protein used in cheese making be sourced from milk. You see why I talk about the cynicism? We're splitting hairs here, and really who we're letting split hairs are American suppliers that are undermining a Canadian system. This is why you have to act now. Some processors have been taken to using milk protein substances as part of their required minimum percentage of milk when making cheese, instead of using it as part of their allowable percentage of added ingredients. This is inconsistent with its classification at the border, where the ingredients are not even considered under the dairy chapter of the customs tariff schedule, entering the country with a tariff fee. As a result, more ingredients are being used in cheese making than are allowed under the cheese compositional standards, and this is resulting in less Canadian milk being used and a loss of revenue for Canadian farmers. Now, just with having said that, we know that what is happening right now is very disingenuous. The use of dye-filtered milk, which is not really milk, is disingenuous, and it's surprising that this issue is being ignored and that it really has come to this. My colleague from Berthier Masquinongé has formulated an excellent motion, and this is something that our government can embrace confidentially, with confidence. These standards have been in place since 2008, and they continue to go on unenforced to the detriment of Canadian farmers. And well, today is our time to act. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity for this government to put their own words and their own hope into action, and I would urge you to do so today.
Okay.